name's Joseph Bell, in case there's any doubt. And I like to think that I'm an intelligent and friendly, if a little right-wing sort of person. I know Pythagoras' theorem. I can just about get my head around trigonometry, and I know that if there was any possible fault in Charles Darwin's evolutionary argument, it was that he couldn't explain the genetic variations key to natural selection, due to the Victorian era's very little knowledge of genetics at the time. If any meaning can be derived from these pointless facts and shameless boasting, it's that I'm not an idiot. I'm in favour of women's rights, gay marriage, general equality. I'm a fan of Dusty Springfield, so now you know that I'm not in the slightest possible notion morally flawed. I don't look too bad either. And yet, if you were to believe today's mainstream liberal media, as well as many so-called prominent intellectuals, many of you would probably be saying, assuming you had any prior knowledge of my belief system, that I and people like me are, I have to look at the notes for this, uneducated, intolerant, misogynistic, homophobic, racist, anti-Semitic, mentally unhinged bigots, and a danger to children whose every thought is incontrovertibly wrong, although probably and preferably not to my face. What am I? I'm a religious person. I happen to believe in a God. Why do I say religious person? Why am I not being specific? It's because I feel that it's religion in general that seems to be the new so-called scourge of society. The media, many of the left, the so-called new atheist movement, all seem to express a hostile and unremitting scorn towards it. Muslims are mistrusted as being an entire organisation of fascistic anarchists. Jews have lost most of the respect they garnered in the wake of the Holocaust, and don't get me started on Christians. Obviously, I'll be getting myself started soon. Let me take a minute to get my definitions across. Atheism, the lack of belief in a god, gods, or afterlife, is fine. Outspoken atheism, that's fine as well. But I don't really have any respect whatsoever for anti-theism. This is because I feel it encourages atheists and agnostics to view those who disagree with them with contempt and intolerance. You might be wondering, what is this God bother on about? They're the intolerant ones. For those of you who are wondering such a thing, may I ask, when was the last time you heard someone criticize atheism in a similar way to how religion is criticized in the media? In the mainstream media. And by mainstream media, I mean something that a lot of people are likely to have seen, so nothing from Channel 5. If you think about it, the media is incredibly biased when it comes to religion in this manner. And you see very little advocacy of religion I suspect it's possibly to avoid offending atheists due to the stereotype that we're all out to shove religion down your throat. As a result, it's atheism that's constantly shoved down mine. And if I may say so, I suspect that's because of the constantly promoted stereotype that atheism is a sign of higher intelligence to religious people that it could well be a focal reason as to why it's increased over recent years. Because religion is denounced as by the media as a sign of stupidity or even mental illness. What I've seen many new atheists do is blame religion in general for terrorism and war, something which strikes me as very as doing an exploitative disservice not only to religious people but also to the victims of terrorism. To tell the bereaved of terrorist victims, religion did this to you, strikes me as maybe a lot worse than when faith schools supposedly indoctrinate children. And anyway, extremism is caused by a combination of grievances and ideologies. These ideologies could be anything, whether political, ethnic, sexual, religious, the list goes on. Militant anti-theists have a seemingly irritating tendency to claim that all major conflicts can be traced back to faith. Yes, horrifying things have been done in the name of religion, but any historian worth their salt will tell you that wars have been started over land, resources, ideologies in response to atrocities. The reasons can be as varied as life on Earth. Everyone has their opinions and ideologies, but it seems to me that there will always be war and terror as long as people can't learn to tolerate the opinions and ideologies of others. something which the Bible does teach people to do. What's more annoying is that the media portrays atheists as not only a persecuted minority, but also the epitome of reason and tolerance, much like how Christ himself appears in the Bible, responsible for most major advancements in science and equality, when really they couldn't possibly be both, could they? Other myths about religion I'd like to debunk is that we're stupid because it's supposedly in complete opposition to science and reason, as well as the idea that freedom of expression in the arts is there to phase religion out. I personally think there's perhaps more evidence of a God in the afterlife than there is for the multiverse theory, but that's a subject for another talk. The idea that there's no place for religious belief in science is not only debatable, it's also a bit dangerous. The idea that, well, due to its popularity, it could lead to a culture where there's no place for religious people in scientific careers. And anyway, millions of people hold religious views and reconcile them with scientific knowledge. Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientific minds in history, once said, a man who has the discovery of gravity to his name, pretty impressive, once said that the human thumb alone was convincing enough for him that there was a God. And as for the arts, they are encrusted with religious themes, and it strikes me as wildly presumptuous and irrational to think that this was just because it was the only game at the time, as if people only developed a creative imagination AD, after Darwin. You can find religious themes and issues of theological morality in great works of art, from Michelangelo to Dostoevsky, as well as Charles Dickens, Shakespeare, even in works of art from people who probably weren't religious. In many beloved stories, the characters are drastically affected by theological implications of their actions. To take away religion, you must neuter the areas of the brain that breed spiritual experiences from which religion stems from. Yes, those areas of the brain are scientifically proven. And without them, those works of art, along with many other works of art with religious themes, lose the emotional power that makes them great. Speaking of the brain, Richard Dawkins calls faith a process of non-thinking. If religion is also a greater manifestation of faith, and it isn't non-thinking. It's just another method of thinking that makes life livable. When you leave for work in the morning, I don't think any of you weigh up the evidence that you're not going to have some kind of hideous accident. Of course, none of this would actually matter if religion were a bad thing. Good thing it isn't. It seems to me that many anti-theists have at best taken a glance through the Bible looking for something to complain about. Now, this is a tricky bit, but I think that most Christians know that the Bible isn't exactly God himself and don't really take the whole thing as gospel. There are sublime, brilliant, modernistic morals in the Bible that ought to be lived by, as well as things that, to say the least, aren't exactly PC. But most thinking Christians know that it's best to live by the former rather than the latter. The judiciary does this sort of thing with contradictions and absurdities in past laws. They look at the intentions of the authors, the wider meanings of different terms, and even just ignoring minor footnotes altogether so as to achieve the best possible judgment. I suspect many Christians do this with the Bible, and why not? I shouldn't have to convert to atheism just because I don't think that homosexuality is a sin. I prize the words of Jesus above any other proverbs in the whole Bible, because whether you're an atheist through and through, you can't really fault the man for promoting profound messages of tolerance, reason, and anti-materialism, both unique and dangerous to express for the time and place he lived in. It's for these reasons that I hate when Christians in general are demonized as society's great oppressors or latter-day fascists. Martin Luther King was a Christian, and Malala Yousafzai is a Muslim. To suggest that fascism and religion are the same thing is to suggest that being part of an organised religion somehow makes you an unintentional fascist, when there's no such thing. You either seek the extermination of all people who disagree with you, or you don't. And I don't. Really, I don't. In the end, what I want you to take from this talk is this. I think fanatics, misogynists and homophobes who look for self-justification in religious texts betray their own religions and are the real villains for both atheists and theists. They should be seen as an embarrassment to religious people, not an example of them. Atheists in the audience. If you think ironically, you are no better than those fanatics if you think, ironically, that your atheism makes you more tolerant than religious people. Furthermore, if you've stopped believing in a God, please can you stop believing about the stereotypes about people who still do? Then I guess we can all cohabitate. One more thing, no religion, no Christmas. Enough said.